yeah, it's taken a long time to come to that, because I think when I was in my 20s, I'd be like, oh, I've got loads of flaws. You shouldn't, know me as anything other than, flawed. And now I'm starting to realize those imperfections are pretty cool.
Hello, it's Zoe, coach, creator, and mischief maker behind the Mischief Movement podcast, your weekly inspo for people looking for more hell yeah in their life. I'm on a mission to help you rediscover that rebellious streak, find your confident inner badass, and stop holding yourself back from the amazing life you've been dreaming of. Join me each week as I discuss mindset, share stories, or develop strategies, sometimes alone, but most often through interviewing adventurous, unconventional guests who are shaking up the status quo, living life on their terms, and impacting the world by doing things differently. Not long ago, I woke up one day and thought, this isn't the life I'd imagined for myself. I felt disconnected and unfulfilled, but I set my intention firmly on adding more fun, getting out of my comfort zone, and becoming curious about what truly lit me up. And then magical things started to happen, including this podcast. As that famous quote goes, she remembered who she was and the game changed. I've always loved the word mischief because it's cheeky, playful, and a little bit rebellious. And that's exactly what I hope this podcast brings to the table. Let's rewrite the rules, throw two fingers up to society, and do more of the things we love. So I'm here to empower you to boldly rebel against the ordinary and support you as you design a life you don't want to escape from. If you feel called to activate your own adventure and make unconventional your new normal, I dare you to jump in with me. Well, how can I describe this gem of an episode? I don't even know where to begin. What have plumbing chemicals, petrol stations, film school, fashion, and empowering women through storytelling all got in common? No? Well, the answer is this week's incredible guest, Michelle Hands, founder of the badass brand She Who Dares Wins, which at the moment is a podcast, a line of clothing, and a series of documentaries that showcase the amazing stories of women around the world leading from the front and going after their dreams. If you've ever been called a dreamer, or if you're worried you don't have the confidence, or you feel too much like an underdog to pursue your ideas, or maybe you're simply curious about what it takes to design a life around the things you love, keep listening, because you're definitely going to want to save this one and listen to it again. Well, this week I'm joined by Michelle Hands, founder of She Who Dares Wins. Do you want to tell everybody what your mischief is and what She Who Dares Wins is all about?
Yeah, so I guess it's about, there's a long story behind it, but ultimately it's...
We've got all night, You can.
Okay, that's fine.
You can go long if you want to.
Let's go a little bit long then. So I spent 17 years in construction and looking around, not really realizing until a lot of my friends were like, dude, what you're experiencing is not normal. And I was like, okay, there's not many women on site. So I started to share that story of like the crazy stuff that was happening to me on Instagram, as we all do. And at the time it was called This Is a Man's World. And it grew quite a really big community of women, not just in construction, but the trades where it was male dominated, and people were kind of loving the honesty that I had regarding what was happening on site, etc. And then halfway through one particular job that was quite hard, someone said to me, why do you still do this? And I was like, wow, She Who Dares Wins. And actually I was a huge, and still am, a fan of Only Fools and Horses. So I think that's kind of where... Yeah. He who dares rodders, and I very much have the underdog. Like I think he's the male version of me, where I'm the female version of him. That underdog, always trying new things. So I was like, I'm going to change everything to She Who Dares Wins, and now it's become less about me and my story, and more about kind of daring women to win. Because I think the one thing that I realized over time, I was like, well, how did I get through these experiences and stuff that I've done? And it's just turning up and daring to win. So I now kind of want to encourage a lot of other women through trying to empower them and inspire them by other women's stories as well. And go against the grain a little bit. Like it's a little bit of a badass brand. Like
It's not a little bit. It really is. It really is. And I have to say that when I told my community that I was speaking to you this evening, I don't know if you saw one of the comments that came in. It was like, I don't have a question for her, but I just wanted to know that her T-shirts and her stuff is awesome. So there you go.
Awesome. Yeah, well, I agree. The merch side of things really happened during COVID and was never really meant to be a thing. But I was like, you know what? I've always kind of sick of growing up wanting to buy the guys' clothes with the cool designs on. And I still, to this day, don't think there are many brands out there that, we're always the second thought. So I was like, do you know what? I'm going to put my money behind it, do a few cool designs that kind of have the same message that I want to portray with the brand and the community. And go from there. But yeah, it's kind of looking at the wild side of your personality and letting that loose.
I love that. The wild side. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
And how do you feel when you wear your own stuff? Does it make you feel empowered, not just because of the slogan, but to think this is pretty badass in itself, really?
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes I don't even remember, and people will be like, oh, what's really cool is when someone's like, oh, I like your top, and you're like, oh, it's mine. Yeah. And they're like, yeah, I know it's yours, you're wearing it. And I'm like, oh, no, it's like my brand. And then that whole story comes out. So yeah, it is cool. I'm yet to, I've sold over, I think I've had up to date, so there's over 4,000 people have ordered from me, and I've yet to see someone, which I know is
but it'll happen, and it'll
when that happens, that'll be an absolute game changer. So yeah.
But will you go up to them and tell them and be like, oh my god, I designed that, and I'm so excited to see you wearing it?
Yeah, I want a selfie and everything, and I'd probably give them here we go. There's an exclusive here. If anyone's listening that has some of my merch, I will probably give them. Here we go. I'll give them £100 gift card to spend on the shop.
Oh my god, that's such a cool exclusive. I hope everybody goes and puts their stuff on that.
Yeah, I hope there's some people in Leeds that are just like, right, let's go and find Michelle.
That'd incredible. And so, like, when you started, it was just an Instagram page.
Yeah.
Did you have sort of grand aspirations to turn it into merch, or was that something that just kind of evolved out of the engagement that you were getting from your audience and stuff? How did it come about?
I think I've always been even as a kid, like a dreamer. I've always been sketching ideas and thinking about business, and I've always been in business since the age of 21. I've had like quite a few businesses, but they've been not at all in the creative or kind of like fashion side of things.
What were they? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so I had it's a bit like Breaking Bad when I.
Oh God, is this?
Yeah,
is this legit?
Crazy story. Yeah, I was in construction, then I came out of construction. And before construction, there was film school. I wanted to basically be an actress, and then decided that wasn't for me, but still loved the process of making films, which is how the kind of YouTube side of things took place when I was actually working in construction. But I took a break from construction for about 2 or 3 years to, so random, but I ran a plumbing chemical company. So we made plumbing chemicals that go into your boiler with my brother. And we literally made this chemical in our garage. And we realized that these two companies that had the monopoly on the UK market were charging an insane amount of money for a chemical that could be made for pennies. And so we just decided to try and crack it. So I was, for a small period of time, cold sales woman on the running up and down the country, going into plumbers merchants, just trying to sell this chemical. And it was awesome. It was the greatest experience, and something that I look back on really fondly, because it gave me so many tools now. Rocking up and trying to sell something to someone that doesn't want to be sold to, and in a male dominated environment. So yeah, that was one business. And then that kind of led its well when e-commerce was just kicking off. We decided to kind of sell nuts and bolts on an e-commerce website, which is where we had a company called Nut Job Limited, which was like crazy. Yeah. And then I went back into construction because it's always been a little bit of an easy route for me. And there was still unfinished business, lots of things to learn. But yeah, so I think my dad's in business. My dad's been in business. In fact, he only recently sold his business. I think I've always had that entrepreneurial streak. I never felt like I was going down the right route with those other businesses. Like now I feel, even though it's hard because I don't have any experience where I'm going and what I'm doing, it feels right, and it feels at this age a right time to be doing it as well.
That's incredible. I love that. I love that you could also look back and sort of join the dots a little bit and see how everything has brought you to this point. It's all been useful.
Yeah. That's one thing that I think is cool and that I always try and talk about, is that whilst I could probably in the narrative say failure quite a few times, but actually my biggest failures have been the biggest lessons. And actually when I've succeeded, it's not taught me a huge amount, if that sounds strange, but the failures have been good for me.
Yeah. What would you consider one of your failures to be?
I think I get carried away sometimes with, at the end of the day, we're running businesses, and sometimes I've got caught up in, the end result and not enjoying the process, and then kind of tripped over myself. Like I did that with the first time I launched the clothing range. Like I went hard and then just started designing loads of stuff, and people would ask for like new sizes, and I'd bring out new sizes, then they'd ask for, and in the end what actually happened was I realized that from a business perspective it wasn't the best way to run a brand. But it's a learning curve. I think in engineering, when I was freelance engineer, there was lots of mistakes. Like I project managed a petrol station with zero experience, and one day a wall fell down and concrete spilled all into like this major highway, which was like a master disaster.
Oh my God.
But they're funny times now. I look back and I think, what was I doing? But I learned so much. And in engineering and construction, things go wrong all the time. That's just how it is. And at the time I took it to heart. I was probably only, I don't know, late 20s, not a huge amount of experience. But now I look back at it, I think, do you know what? I had a go, and 2 or 3 years later, I was running projects, no problem. And I think if I hadn't have had those mistakes, then I wouldn't have learned. And
Do you think that the she who dares wins has been in you from the beginning? Have you always had that kind of daring streak, or is that something that grew with your experiences?
I think confidence definitely for me grows with just pushing a little bit outside the comfort zone, having a go. So I guess daring, and then you take these baby steps, don't you? Then you get confidence. And I've always been the one to have a go. So I think, definitely it comes from that. I think as a kid, I was incredibly quiet. Like my parents are very, not shocked, but surprised, I guess, at the different things that I've done over the years, because I was the quietest kid. I never spoke to anyone.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like painfully shy, and always the underdog. So I struggled at school, but always managed to get where I needed to get by just, I was on the one in the background that's like, not giving up. And I've always, like, now I think that's really interesting when I speak to people, like being the underdog, like with my 2 boys as well. I'm like, you don't want to be like too clever. And like, cause then there's pressure. And, when you're constantly a success at everything, then you don't know how to deal with failure. Whereas I think it's quite nice to be a little bit of an underdog, because you can just keep chipping away, and eventually, you slowly creep up to wherever it is you want to be, but you gain confidence on the way. So yeah, definitely underdog would be something I'd describe myself as.
Do you think, having said that word underdog, that people have underestimated you?
Oh, massively, yeah. And I like that. Like I generally would like to go into a situation where that is the case. Even on a daily basis, I used to love going onto a construction site, and people quite often, when you go onto a new project, they don't know who you are or what you're there for. Even up until quite recently, because I was a freelance engineer, I'd turn up to clients, and you'd have guys that wouldn't know me, and they'd be saying, "Oh, are you the trainee, or are you this, or are you that?" And then I kind of just didn't say anything. And then in construction, it doesn't matter what you say, you have to prove yourself out in the field. So I just get my kit, just go out and then do what I needed to do, and then just see the faces of those that were like, oh, right, so she's the engineer. Oh, right, okay, so she's come and marked out a whole road. Oh, right, so we need it. Oh, right, oh, no, she's given us this. And that's kind of subtle and nice to be like that.
Yeah, kind of satisfying, I imagine.
Yeah, not in a kind of, I never wanted to kind of be disrespectful.
No.
But yeah, it was good. It was a good feeling.
I remember you saying that you didn't actually set out to be in construction. You kind of fell into it. So how did that come around?
Yeah, so I actually did a geography degree, and then in my final year, whilst writing my dissertation, was like, what am I going to do? Like, most geography graduates become accountants, and that is like my absolute worst nightmare. Yeah, or go work for the Environment Agency. So it was actually that time that I signed up for film school, and being someone who was incredibly shy, it was a massive step for me. And I didn't just go to film school in London. I went to America and I went to Los Angeles. So I was like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it, how it should be done. And when I got back, it was one of those things where I was like, I'm going to get picked up in Hollywood. It's just going to happen overnight. And then when I got back into the country, my brother's friend was like, right, there's a summer job going, which I think you're part qualified for. And looking back on it, I was probably like 5% qualified for this job. But it was a lot of money. And it was only for 6 to 9 months of the year because it was weather dependent. Mm-hmm. So I went and did that job and I absolutely blagged it, and it was on a landfill, and it was working for a construction company, making sure that they kept to kind of legislation for the Environment Agency. Yeah. And it's a very small job, a very small industry that once you start doing it, if you're half decent, they just keep you. And so that was amazing. Like, I had the best kind of, I'd say 5 or 6 years. And it was slightly construction related. It wasn't full on engineering, but it was construction related. But I worked alongside a setting out engineer. And then a few years down the line, the industry was slowly, slowing up. And the setting out engineer was like, you've seen what I do, you know how to read drawings. You should think about going into setting out and land surveying for construction. And I did a course down in London, and then just ended up on some big projects, did like the Nottingham tram, petrol stations, housing sites. And it was literally that one time of get a job, and then just things snowballed from there, and never look back.
Bonkers, isn't it, how that happens sometimes?
Yeah, it's quite common actually. A lot of women that I speak to in the industry, they've kind of fallen upon the job, and it's crazy because if someone had said to me at the age of 16, would you consider a job in construction? And I say this to girls now because you don't see many women in construction. You don't think you can be in it. You don't think there are jobs for you, but that's absolutely not the case.
Yeah, that's true. But what can we do to inspire and empower women today?
I think what I'm trying to do is I think we second guess ourselves, and we don't believe that we can do things. And I'm not going to come from a place where I've got it all figured out. Like I had a big wobble after having my second child, like post-COVID, because I think you guess yourself then when you become a mother, because it's this whole other job. Yeah. But what I do believe in is this just trying things. And the more I speak to women, I guess you probably understand this as well, the more people that you speak to, the more you realise no one has it figured out. And there's never a right time to start. And I would just really love for more women that have, I get women say to me all the time, like even friends, like, I wish I could do this, or I really want to do this, but at some point I will get round to it. And I just want to shake them and be like, there's no some point, like, come on, this is it. And it's not easy, like taking those steps, but you can take baby steps to get to where you need to be. You don't have to quit your job tomorrow and start you start a side hustle, you start a podcast, you see whatever, but don't give up on it, because you never know what happens when you just start. And sometimes starting is the hardest thing.
Sure.
And I do believe there's a lot of women that have the narrative of that's great, but that's not for me. And I'm like, no, it's for everyone.
Yeah.
We've all got different paths to take in life, and everyone's individual, and everyone has, everyone's a story to tell, and everyone's got a passion, and it doesn't matter what that is. If it's knitting, great. If it's, riding motorcycles, but just do it, because no one else can make you do it. It's got to be on your own terms. And I just wish people would give it a go, basically, whatever that might be.
Oh, I love that. I think you just gave me a soundbite right there. I was like, exactly that. It is that though, isn't it? I mean, yeah, I have a lot of these kind of conversations as well. I don't know about you, but people do look at me sometimes like, it's great, Zoe. I love that you're a big dreamer, but when you come back to reality, you'll realise that life is this way. And I'm like, come and join me up here. It's so much more fun.
Totally. Why would you want to go back? And I think you're right. I think the word dreamer, I think a lot of people would describe me the same. They'd be like, dreamer. But if you don't dream, then what's there to look forward to? We should be dreaming, and dreams do get achieved. So
they do. I don't actually suffer too much with the whole kind of comparison thing on Instagram. Quite often I will see people and think, well, if they can do it, of course I can do it,
Yeah.
But it's funny how you say you have had those kind of conversations as well.
Yeah.
I'm excited to continue partnering with Polite Club, a brand whose mission is to change the attitude towards vulnerability and to encourage more conversation around it in order to increase real human connection. Connection is one of my core values, as you know, so to bring more people together and help you rebel against staying the same, Polite Club are offering a cheeky 10% discount when you use the code MISCHIEF at the checkout. 50% of the profits from this organic and rebellious brand are used to fund proactive suicide prevention in the form of coaching, support, and awareness raising. So get involved and become a vulnerable with us. For more info on the brand or to buy online, go to politeclub.co.uk or follow on Instagram at politeclubhq. P.S. If you are a small business doing things differently, an independent brand disrupting the status quo, or simply an unconventional, adventurous individual looking to create a positive impact, I'd love to hear from you about getting your story out there in the world and promoting you. DM me on Instagram at The Mischief Movement. Right, now on with the show. I mean, we've talked a lot about the things that you've done, but what would you like people to know about you as Michelle? What would you like people to sort of walk away with?
I think that I'm scrappy. I'm really unorganized. But I'm hoping that people can see that that's okay. I actually released a sweater last year, which was perfectly imperfect. And I think that kind of would sum me up.
And most of us.
Yeah, it's taken a long time to come to that, because I think when I was in my 20s, I'd be like, oh, I've got loads of flaws. You shouldn't, know me as anything other than, flawed. And now I'm starting to realize those imperfections are pretty cool. I love chatting to people. I love learning from other people, women especially. And I would hope that people would see me as quite approachable. I like to make people laugh. That was actually one of the things recently. I had a life coach that I had a chat with, and he got me to email a bunch of my close friends and family, and with a bunch of questions. And I was really dreading it. And when the questions came back, one of the first things was what ignites me, and everyone put storytelling and entertaining. And I was like, oh, that's really cool, because I'd actually forgotten at that side of my personality, and forgotten that was how I started with all this, was sharing crazy stories about things that happened in construction. So I'm now I'm slowly bringing that back into the brand, about it, not forgetting that it's me, where it came from. So I guess that's what I'd want people to know.
Yeah. And also you are storytelling also through film as well. It's not just the podcast, is it?
Yeah. So my kind of film background, I've never really want to let go of. And YouTube was great for that, because when I started to vlog on the construction site, because I was like, well, I want to make films. Construction is something that I would just set my camera up and people never knew that I was filming. And And that's kind of like, I guess, an itch that I've always wanted to scratch. And I've continued with that. And now, alongside my podcast, I'm going to be doing mini documentary series where I choose people from the podcast that have got kind of like interesting hobbies or careers, and I'll go to them and we'll film together, and it'll be me partaking. So I've done one with Christina, who's a Thai boxer.
Mm-hmm.
And documentary and filmmaking is a real passion. I've never really been able to crack the whole perfect production in terms of like funding and making it profitable, but I don't think storytelling needs to be. I think there's other ways to monetize a business. For me, it's just when I go out and I film, whether it's me in front of the camera or me filming someone else, it's always such a buzz. Like there's nothing that gives me a buzz more than that, other than the podcast. And it's something that I would love for it to grow with the She Who Dares Wins brand is content and creating these documentaries, and maybe getting other brands on board at some point, and just being able to showcase other women's cool stories, because there's so many untold stories out there that are incredible. And I just feel like the more they can be shared, the more we can inspire the next generation to, not everyone's going to, down tools and quit their 9 till 5, but maybe there's a lot of people out there that should question, what they're doing in their jobs, and by having these little videos they can. And I've always been inspired by film documentaries, so I know that how powerful they can be.
Yeah, and I watched some of the documentary with Lara as well, who was doing the solo rowing. Was it across the Atlantic?
Yes, yeah. She's just about to do, I'm not going to reveal it because she hasn't revealed it yet, but she's about to do another massive project. Such a powerhouse and such an incredible story behind her. And I'm just so excited to share more women's stories.
Yeah. How did that come about? Because I noticed that she had She Who Dares Wins on the boat, and she had a t-shirt and everything, and I was like, I mean, that's so fitting, isn't it, really?
Yeah, so it's crazy actually. I randomly got a Facebook message from someone who tagged me in her story, and they were like, you should speak to this woman. And I just read the story and I was like, that's a crazy thing to do on your own. And so I phoned her up, and I was just like, I don't have, the brand is very small. I don't have a huge sum of money, but I think what you're doing is incredible. How can I support you? And I sponsored, basically, if you sponsored her, you could have your sticker on the boat. And I noticed that she'd got Who Dares Wins. So I texted her before the phone call and was like, I think you need to replace that with She Who Dares Wins. And on the phone call, I realised how much Who Dares Wins meant to her, because she lost her father and he was in the SAS. So I was like, whoa, this is so much bigger than that. And then we got chatting, and when you speak to someone for like 5 or 10 minutes and you're like, I get this person, like we're on the same wavelength. And I think I just said to her, I was like, look, is there anyone documenting this experience for you? And she was like, no. I was like, okay, I think I'm going to try and make this happen. And Zoe, who I film with, she's like whenever I need a professional, like that's her full-time job. And I said, do you reckon we could go out to Spain and film her before she sets off? Like, she's got this incredible story. And I was like, I'm going to make it work. I'm going to find the finances for this. And so we just, flew out in December. And she was pre-race. So she was pre-packing everything into the boat. And she had so much time for us. Like, she just, lost her dad. She was on this journey. She'd got this week to pre-plan everything, and everything was crazy. But she gave us so much time, and I was so grateful for that. Like, and her story was so heartfelt. And then we left literally like 2 days, we think, before she set off. And then we followed her journey just remotely over the internet. And then I've had her back on, and her podcast is soon to be released. Just an incredible person. And she really has taught me a lot in, resilience and just going for it and having a lot of self-belief. So, that's how that crazy thing. And most things, like you probably know, the internet, it just takes for a DM.
Yeah.
And then you're on a roll with,
Yeah.
chatting to people and being connected. And I think that's, like, I do have a love-hate relationship with social media.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Totally.
absolutely do have a love and
I think that's normal.
yeah. But when it hits gold like that, it's incredibly powerful, and it's a reminder for me to show up as well, because you never know who's scrolling that day and what impact you can have on
You've
them.
no idea who's even seeing your stuff and is just lurking.
Yeah.
They're not liking, they're not engaging, but you are being seen.
Yeah.
I've experienced this firsthand. I'm like, I didn't even know I was on your radar, and they're like, we've been not in a freak way, but we have been watching you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's about that, isn't it? It's about turning up when you don't get anything back, and being a little bit. I guess I was naive in my 20s, and I was like, followers and likes and comments. And now I'm trying to become a little bit more selfless and be like, you got to help people. You got to put stuff out there, because it's those times in business, probably up until a few years ago, when, I was struggling, that I would read back through emails that women had sent me. One in particular, who was a woman who was going through cancer treatment. And she was like, every time I go to chemo with my friend, like, we've both got Shoe Dares Wins t-shirts, and we turn up the t-shirts. Yeah. And like, I'd read these to my husband. He was like, this is why you keep going. These are the very reasons, not the articles or the journalists that turn up to you to interview you. And, it's the people that you touch, the people that need you. So that's the start reminder to keep going, and always will be for me.
Yeah, yeah. And it's good that you said that you do go back through them when it feels hard, because I was going to ask you, what do you do? Because it's not always going to be plain sailing, and I imagine that there's so many tough moments, even amongst all the good stuff.
Yeah. I think with anyone in business or even in a job, there's ebbs and flows, isn't there? And it's learning to enjoy and sit with the hard times. Like, I used to get quite panicky, when things weren't going right. And to be honest with you, for quite a few years, I jumped back into construction, because that was kind of like my safe space. And now I'm learning to just sit with it till the next one comes. It does come. And the things that get me through, is listening to other people's stories, and family as well. Like, I have an incredibly supportive husband, two absolutely incredible young boys, and a mom and dad and brother who are also incredibly supportive. And I think they kind of get through it. I saw my dad's business go through good times and bad times, and he came out the other end. And I think he's kind of subtly taught me that you just keep going, one foot in front of the other.
Yeah. And how do you see She Who Dares Wins progressing? Because right now you've got your podcast.
Yeah.
You're making some documentaries.
Yeah.
You've got your merch.
Yeah.
Is there something else on the horizon?
No. I've learned the hard way. Too many fingers, too many pies. Yeah. The plan would be, I guess, if it was like a pie chart, would be the content as the larger portion of this.
Yeah.
And it's actually the portion of She Who Dares Wins which has dipped massively in the last couple of years, because of these other projects. Like, merch takes a lot.
Yes.
To go into that, and I end up thinking, I've not posted, I've not given any quality content. So now I'm having help with the content, in terms of, I'm not very good at strategy or even keeping to a schedule. So I've got help on plugging the gap where I kind of fail on that point. And so content's going to come back into it. I'm going to pour my heart and soul into the newsletter. And that's not just to push people to buy products. Like, it's going to be a newsletter that I would want, if I was receiving it, I would want to save it and be able to come back and read it and read those points. So that's the kind of aim with the newsletter. Again, the documentaries, I'd love for those to grow to a point where, they're series and we're getting other brands on board and the production value increases. So we get to travel with that and go and meet, women in other countries that are doing amazing things. And the podcast are just, it's really in its like infancy, in terms of, I did 2 or 3 episodes before, but they were incredible guests on there. They were predominantly friends on Instagram that were in construction industry, and now I'm just, I'm scaling the internet and finding the most weird and wonderful stories from women. And I really want to expose those through the podcast and, have on, like I've had Emma White, who's a jewelry maker, and industries that I've never considered or would consider, and speaking to women that are doing, I want to speak to a butcher, and I want to speak to, someone who flies planes for a living, and people in sport. Sport's quite an easy one. There seems to be a lot of great stories in sport, but yeah, that's the plan, is to increase exposure to women and empower them through the power of storytelling.
Yeah, because I think, as you said before, once we start talking about what we're doing or what other people are doing, it does make you question your choices and also what's available.
Yeah.
Things that perhaps you just haven't considered before. If I can help you in any way, finding people or, groups, communities, I don't know, please feel free to just reach out to me. Even if you're just looking for, right, I've got a podcast episode coming up, but I need to find a person in this particular industry or somebody random that you know. I do know a lot of people in a lot of strange industries. So I might be able to help you.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, no, that's what it is. It's all just about talking, isn't it? It's about meeting new people. And I was incredibly excited I was not going to let you, even though I was dying with a cough this morning, I was like, I'm not letting Zoe down.
Oh, bless you.
It's great. And I just love talking and hearing other people's stories. And yours is fascinating too.
Really?
So yeah. I think weirdly so you worked in the shoe industry.
Yes.
So yeah, that industry always fascinated me. And actually my father-in-law, he designed shoes for a small period of time. So it's a small world.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, I was always more fascinated by the handmade sort of leather. I had this vision of a little shoemaker in Italy who, I don't know, had no family to pass his business on, and all was just waiting for the day that some naive English woman would just walk in and be like, oh my God, I just want to take over your store. Bingo, there you go. I'm retiring. Here you go. I'll teach you everything you need to know. And it just didn't work out that way for me. So
it wasn't meant to be. Maybe it was a podcast.
It wasn't meant to be. No, it wasn't meant to be. I much prefer, I think, having these kind of conversations with people doing all sorts of incredible things, though. It's just fascinating. And the fact that I just get to sit and ask questions. Like you were saying, everybody's got a story.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. People's journeys are never linear. And there's so much random stuff that goes on between the beginning and the middle and the end.
Yeah.
And, unpicking that. And why did you choose that? And what happened there? And, it's just really fascinating to me.
Yeah. No, it is. It's, I think I've always been fascinated by storytelling and also listening, like you say, listening to people's stories. I'm always that one on the train that's like, shh, to my husband, and there's somebody over there talking, they've got a fascinating story.
Where can people find out more about you?
So predominantly, I guess the main website, shoedareswins.com. On there, there'll be links to the podcast, there'll be links to the merch. You can find me at shoedareswins on Instagram, at shoedareswins on TikTok.
You're a TikToker.
So I kick myself because I started TikTok about 3 years ago, and if I'd have just kept going like anything, I probably would have been half decent in terms of following by now. But I stopped started. But I'm back on now because I have a young, like a graduate who is on board to help me with social media, and the world of TikTok is kind of opening my eyes and the potential that it has. So yes, TikTok. I've not figured it out yet. I still feel like I'm a grandma on TikTok, but yeah, it's fun. I like TikTok because it's less. I feel like Instagram got to a point where, you wanted a nice feed and always second guessing. Well, today I don't look that great. Do I need to put something on Instagram? Whereas I feel like with TikTok, it's just like run and gun. It's probably more my vibe, to be honest with you. If we're talking like if I'd have been here 20 years ago and TikTok would have been then, it'd have been perfect. But I'm trying to have fun as well with the socials and not look at it as a job, which it is ultimately. But yeah, I'm definitely getting caught by the algorithm, so they say.
Well, like you say, I think if you can attack it like from a point of view of just having fun with it, it's probably the best way. Otherwise, you just tangle yourself in knots over algorithms, don't you?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Michelle, it's been an absolute pleasure. And I think if there's one thing I've learned from you today, it's just go for it, isn't it? Really, it's like, I think anybody who listens to this episode will just feel as though they've just got to be a bit bold, really.
Yeah. You never know what's going to happen, but at the end of the day, if you can live without, like, I'd rather be regretful of stuff that I tried than regretful of stuff that I didn't try.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Don't go anywhere. Here come this week's takeaways. Number 1, there are always lessons in a perceived failure. In fact, I often invite you to reframe failure as simply feedback. 2, try not to focus too much on the end result, but learn to enjoy the process. 3, confidence comes from taking scrappy action that's just outside your comfort zone. 4, there's no shame in being the underdog. There's a lot to be said for staying in your lane with low expectations, building the confidence as you go, and persisting slowly towards your goal. 5, nobody has it all figured out, and there will never be a right time, so just get going with the baby steps. Don't let your fear block you from giving something a go. 6, it's okay to be a dreamer because people do reach their dreams. 7, it's okay to be scrappy and feel disorganized. No one is perfect, so strive for the progress instead and learn to embrace your so-called imperfections as your uniqueness. 8, you might have a love-hate relationship with social media, but it's a great asset for connecting with people and building relationships. When you show up and give selflessly, you never know who will notice you. 9, when you can really anchor into your why, it will keep you going on the tough days. Focus on the people you help, the lives you touch, and your reasons to stay the course, creating for yourself a folder of positive feedback which you can read if things feel tough. Well, I hope you loved today's episode and it made you think differently, or perhaps nudged you into changing something in your life that's not working for you. I'd love to give you a shout out right here on the podcast too, so let me know what you think, what you'd like to hear more of, or how you've been inspired to take bold action. Let's keep in touch over on Instagram at The Mischief Movement, or click the link in the show notes to sign up to my Mischief Mail newsletter, where you'll get exclusive insights on upcoming episodes and your chance to submit questions to future guests. But shh, don't tell anyone, it's our secret. Please keep spreading the word about the podcast. You're doing such an amazing job, and I'm also super grateful for your 5-star ratings on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, which seriously help my mission to inspire and empower more people like us to choose mischief over mediocre. Have a great week and keep making mischief. Ciao.